when my mother slid a $1,200 fine dining bill across the table and smirked. "Oh, you're late. Cover the bill, will you?" LOL, she thought she had pulled off the ultimate financial ambush. My sister snickered, calling me clueless as ever, while 12 relatives sat back in comfortable satisfaction. They had deliberately sent me the dinner text message exactly 10 minutes before the check arrived, fully expecting their reliable, hard-working scapegoat daughter to quietly hand over her credit card out of pure public shame. But as my mother pointed at the total, expecting a tearful argument, a cold, calm smile spread across my face. I didn't yell. I didn't reach for my purse. Instead, I stood up, called the restaurant general manager over, and requested a complete breakdown of the corporate account used to make the reservation. The moment the manager spoke, my mother's face turned completely pale, and my family realized they had just locked themselves inside a massive legal trap. My name is Clara Sterling. I am 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my existence in my family has been defined by one unspoken rule. My older sister, Vanessa, was the golden princess who could do no wrong, while I was the low-maintenance, reliable background worker expected to clean up everyone else's mess. I spent years working late shifts, climbing the corporate ladder to become a senior financial auditor, while Vanessa floated through life on my parents' endless praise and unearned subsidies. The text message arrived on my phone at precisely 8:05 p.m. on a Tuesday night. My mother's text in the family group chat read, "Clara, hurry up. We are all sitting down for our 35th anniversary dinner at the Prime Cut Steakhouse. You better not disappoint us." Panic instantly surged through me. I dropped my work files, rushed out of my apartment, and braved heavy downtown traffic, assuming I had somehow misremembered the invitation time. I pulled up to the valet, practically sprinting through the grand mahogany doors of the city's most exclusive steakhouse. When the hostess guided me to the private dining alcove at 8:15 p.m., the scene before me made my stomach drop into a heavy, icy knot. 12 family members were sitting around a lavish table strewn with empty champagne flutes, cracked lobster shells, and wiped-clean dessert plates. They hadn't just started dinner. They were completely finished. Before I could even pull out a chair, my mother reached for the leather folder sitting beside her wine glass and slid it across the white tablecloth directly into my space. "Oh, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," my mother announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "You're late, Clara. Cover the bill, will you? LOL. Consider it your anniversary gift to your father and me." Vanessa leaned back, sipping her cognac, and let out a mocking laugh. "Still as clueless as ever, Clara. How could you be late to your own parents' milestone? The least you can do to make up for your disrespect is hand over your card." The entire table stared at me, smirking and waiting for the usual sequence of events, me shrinking down in embarrassment, biting my tongue, and quietly paying to avoid a scene. But as I looked down at the $1,200 check, then back at my phone showing the text sent just 10 minutes earlier, the realization hit me with absolute crystalline clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated, deliberate ambush. And they had no idea who they were actually messing with. To understand the sheer audacity of what my family was trying to pull off, you have to understand the toxic financial dynamic that had governed my entire life. My parents operated on a strict, unspoken double standard that always favored Vanessa. She was the golden child who could commit no sin, despite living a life of flashy, unearned luxury supported entirely by maxed-out credit cards and my parents' dwindling savings. Whenever her reckless spending caught up with her, whether it was a defaulted car payment or a lavish vacation she couldn't afford, my parents would swoop in to bail her out. Meanwhile, I was treated like an invisible utility. When I graduated top of my class with a degree in accounting, my achievement was met with a distracted nod. When I secured a high-paying job as a senior financial controller, my parents didn't celebrate. They simply viewed my hard-earned salary as a safety net for their collective irresponsibility. Over the years, I had quietly paid off my parents' back taxes and settled Vanessa's emergency bills, foolishly hoping that my financial compliance would eventually earn me a shred of genuine respect. But all it did was fuel their entitlement. They genuinely believed that because they gave birth to me, they had an automatic right to open my purse whenever they wanted to play the role of high society elites. They thought they had trapped me in a corner with a $1,200 dinner bill, expecting me to swallow my pride to avoid a public scene in a high-end restaurant. What they didn't know, what their arrogant greed had completely blinded them to, was a massive operational reality about the very room we were sitting in. As a senior financial controller for an international corporate firm, my primary responsibility involves managing commercial accounts and auditing VIP corporate accounts for several luxury hospitality groups across the city. Prime Cut Steakhouse wasn't just a fancy restaurant to me, it was one of my firm's flagship commercial clients. 2 weeks prior to this dinner, my mother had visited my apartment under the fake pretense of checking in on me. While I was in the kitchen pouring her tea, she had quietly rifled through my home office desk, snatched a private corporate voucher sheet, and copied down my executive corporate discount code and reservation protocol. She and Vanessa had used that stolen corporate code to book this private dining alcove, fully believing they had found a magical loophole that would allow them to feast like royalty on my firm's tab. They assumed the restaurant would simply bill my corporate account automatically. But when the manager informed them right before my arrival that the code required an in-person executive signature and an active corporate ID to close out the tab, panic had set in. Rather than admitting their theft, they devised a hasty, malicious backup plan. They sent me that text message at 8:05 p.m., inviting me after the food was already consumed, so they could drop the bill in front of me and manipulate me into using my personal credit card to cover their fraudulent tracks. They thought they were playing a masterclass game of manipulation, completely oblivious to the fact that they had just handed me the legal leverage to destroy them. Now, I want to pause for a second and ask all of you watching this right now, what would you do if your own flesh and blood sent you a fake invite just to stick you with a $1,200 bill? Drop a comment below with your city, because I love seeing how far my story reaches. Sitting at that white cloth table under the glaring eyes of my family, I felt the cold, sharp clarity that always comes when you realize you are completely done being exploited. My mother was still smirking, tapping her manicured nails on the mahogany table, while my sister Vanessa crossed her arms, waiting for me to pull out my wallet. "Well, Clara," my mother prodded, her voice dripping with synthetic impatience. "Are you going to pay, or are you going to sit there and embarrass this family in a 5-star establishment?" I didn't blink. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I raised my hand and signaled the floor captain. "Could you please bring the general manager, Mr. Vance, over to our table immediately?" My mother's smirk faltered slightly. "What are you doing, Clara? Don't cause a scene over a simple dinner bill. Just sign it." Within 30 seconds, Mr. Vance, a tall, impeccably tailored man who recognized me instantly from our corporate auditing quarterly meetings, stepped into the private alcove. Before he could greet me, my mother jumped in, trying to hijack the conversation. "Mr. Vance, I am so sorry." My mother gushed with a fake, apologetic laugh. "My daughter is just throwing a minor tantrum about contributing to our family celebration. We're ready to close out the tab now." "Actually, Mr. Vance," I interrupted, my voice perfectly level and deadpan, "I need to perform an immediate audit verification on this table's ledger." I pulled out my official corporate credential badge and laid it flat on the table next to the $1,200 invoice. The room went instantly silent. My parents used an executive corporate authorization code to book this VIP alcove under my firm's commercial account. I continued, looking Mr. Vance dead in the eye. "I am formally notifying you that this code was obtained without authorization. I am revoking corporate billing standing for this table effective immediately." The color drained from my mother's face so fast she looked like she was going to faint. Vanessa sat up straight, her eyes widening in pure terror. Mr. Vance looked down at my credential, then at the reservation file on his tablet, and his polite expression transformed into an icy corporate stare. He looked directly at my father and mother. "Is this true?" Mr. Vance asked, his tone dropping an octave. "Did you input an executive corporate discount code without holding authorized status?" It was just a misunderstanding," my father stammered, his confident facade completely dissolving as he began sweating profusely. "Clara is our daughter. She works for the firm." "She is an employee, sir, not your personal line of credit," Mr. Vance replied sharply. He tapped his tablet and looked at our table. "Because unauthorized corporate codes constitute identity theft and commercial fraud, I cannot allow this bill to leave the building unpaid. You have 5 minutes to settle this $1,200 balance using a valid personal payment method, or I will immediately contact local law enforcement to file a formal report for theft of services." The heavy, suffocating silence that fell over that private dining alcove was broken only by the hum of the air conditioner and the muffled clinking of glasses from the main dining room. 12 family members, who just moments ago were smirking, laughing, and sipping expensive cognac at my expense, sat entirely frozen in absolute shock. Vanessa's arrogant smirk completely vanished. She frantically grabbed her designer purse, ducking her head to avoid the burning stares of nearby patrons and restaurant staff who had gathered near the entrance. My mother gasped for air, clutching her silk blouse with trembling hands as if she had just been struck by lightning. "Clara, how can you do this to your own flesh and blood?" My mother shrieked in a desperate, frantic whisper, her voice cracking under the sudden weight of public humiliation. "We are your parents. You're going to let us get arrested over a misunderstanding." "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom," I replied, my voice cool, steady, and loud enough for every relative at the table to hear clearly. "You stole a corporate code off my desk, ordered the most expensive items on the menu, and texted me 10 minutes before the check arrived so you could force me to pay for your lie. You made your choice. Now pay for it." Mr. Vance stood beside the table like an unyielding stone wall, holding out a wireless payment terminal. "5 minutes, sir," he repeated coldly to my father. Sweat poured down my father's forehead as he pulled out his leather wallet with shaking fingers. He pulled out his primary credit card and slapped it onto the machine. "Declined." A loud, piercing beep echoed through the alcove. The color drained even further from my father's face. Desperate, he pulled out a second card, then a third. "Declined. Declined." His maxed-out credit limits and mounting personal debts had finally caught up with him at the absolute worst possible moment. Panic erupted across the table. My aunts and uncles began whispering furiously among themselves, refusing to look my father in the eye or offer up their own cards to help. My mother turned to Vanessa, practically weeping. "Vanessa, sweetie, use your card. Help your father." Vanessa shrank back, her cheeks flushing bright red. "Mom, my card is maxed out from my vacation last week. I don't have $1,200. Seeing their complete collapse, I stood up from my chair, adjusted my blazer, and leaned over the table. "You have two choices right now," I said, looking my parents dead in the eye. "You can drain your personal emergency savings accounts right now via debit transfer to pay Mr. Vance, or you can spend the rest of your 35th anniversary in the back of a police cruiser for commercial fraud. Pick one." Defeated, trembling, and utterly terrified of facing immediate public arrest on their 35th anniversary, my parents realized they had zero leverage left. With shaking hands, my father pulled up his personal banking application on his phone, accessed their long-term emergency savings, and processed a direct debit transfer to clear the $1,200 balance. The moment the payment terminal beeped approved, Mr. Vance printed the final receipt, handed it to my father without a single word, and signaled for the staff to step back. The grand illusion of their effortless, high-society lifestyle had completely shattered in front of 12 extended relatives. Without saying another word, I picked up my designer clutch, turned on my heel, and walked out through the mahogany doors of Prime Cut Steakhouse into the cool night air, leaving their chaotic whispers behind me forever. Before driving home, I opened my phone and permanently blocked my mother, my father, and Vanessa across every platform, severing the toxic tether that had bound me to their greed for 32 years. The long-term fallout from that single evening was swift and unyielding. Without my silent financial buffers to cover their tracks or absorb their unexpected debts, my parents' fragile house of cards completely disintegrated. Drowning in maxed-out credit lines and forced to pay off their own mounting bills, they had to sell their suburban home at a steep loss and downsize to a modest, two-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town. Vanessa's golden status evaporated overnight. Stripped of our parents' unearned subsidies and unable to leech off my income, she was forced to sell her luxury vehicle and take a grueling, entry-level corporate job just to service her massive credit card debt. The family relatives who had once laughed along with her superficial arrogance quickly scattered, leaving her to face the harsh reality of her own choices. Meanwhile, my life has never been more peaceful. Standing up to them at that dinner table didn't just save me from a $1,200 scam. It gave me the profound strength to claim my independence and realize my true worth. I built a beautiful, secure life surrounded by people who genuinely value me for who I am, not for what I can pay for. Now, I'm curious about all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. What would you have done if your own family pulled a trick like that on you? Would you have forced them to pay the bill themselves, or would you have swallowed your pride to keep the peace? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories.